Hey everyone, welcome back to Faith Talks, where we dive into biblical truth and real life faith. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sarah. Today's episode is all about something that's simple, but not easy.
That's right, we're talking about prayer.
Specifically, we're looking at a message titled Teach Us to Pray, based on Matthew 26:39 to 41, where Jesus prays in the Garden of Gethsemane.
And this episode is inspired by a message from Pastor Kiwon Choi, who shares both biblical insight and personal experience, especially from the Korean church.
Let's start with the story from the message.
Yeah, it's a good one.
A Christian farmer dies in a flood and goes to heaven. During a service, he shares how devastating the flood was, expecting everyone to be amazed.
But then he notices a man in the front row with a long white beard, listening very calmly.
Afterward, he asks who it is.
And the answer?
Noah.
Which is humbling, to say the least.
And that's the point. When it comes to prayer, many of us already know a lot.
But knowing and doing are two very different things.
In Matthew 26, we see Jesus in one of the most intense moments of his life.
He's in the Garden of Gethsemane, about to go to the cross.
And what does he do?
He prays.
And then he turns to his disciples and says, "Keep watching and praying that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak."
That line hits hard.
It really does. We want to pray, but we struggle.
One of the key ideas from this message is that prayer is not just a religious activity.
It's the lifeline of the church.
From Abraham to the Psalms to the early church in Acts, prayer has always been central.
Even in heaven, Revelation shows us prayers rising before God like incense.
So prayer isn't optional, it's essential.
Now, this is where the message gets really interesting.
Yeah, Pastor Choi shares 4 prayer practices from the Korean church that shaped his life.
Let's walk through them one by one.
First, early morning prayer.
Before the day begins, before distractions take over.
Jesus modeled this in Mark 1:35. He got up early, went to a quiet place and prayed.
In Korea, many churches practice this daily.
And even today, there's something powerful about starting your day with God.
Okay, this one is intense. All-night prayer.
Yeah, praying through the night.
Jesus did this too in Luke 6:12.
Now, not everyone can do that regularly, but the principle is devotion.
Making time for extended, focused prayer.
Next, fasting. Fasting is another powerful practice.
Jesus fasted for 40 days in the wilderness.
And in the message, we hear about believers who fasted for days, even weeks.
Fasting reminds us that we depend on God more than food, more than comfort, more than anything.
Lastly, this might be the most important one: desperate and persistent prayer.
Praying with urgency, persistence, and desperation.
Jesus in Gethsemane prayed so intensely that his sweat was like drops of blood.
And he teaches us in Luke 18 to pray and not give up.
The message also includes a deeply personal story.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Pastor Choi shares about his brother who had a severe accident and went into a coma.
Doctors recommended surgery, but the family couldn't afford it.
So, what did he do?
He went to a prayer mountain and fasted and prayed for 3 days.
Crying out to God.
And during that time, he sensed assurance that his brother would live.
And he did.
No surgery, no explanation, just God's miracle.
That kind of story reminds us prayer is not theoretical.
It's real. There's also a warning in this message.
Yeah. When life becomes comfortable, prayer often declines.
We don't feel the same urgency,
And that can happen anywhere, not just in one country.
including here.
So, what do we do with all this?
Simple, but not easy.
We pray.
More intentionally, more consistently, more sincerely.
If you're a pastor, lead your church in prayer.
If you're part of a church, become someone who supports through prayer.
And don't just pray for others, pray with them.
Jesus said, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak."
So maybe today is the day we take one small step.
Set aside time.
Turn off distractions.
and simply talk to God.
That's all for today's episode of Faith Talks.
And special thanks to Pastor Kaiwin Choi for the message that inspired this episode.
If this encouraged you, share it with someone.
And remember, keep the faith.
Keep the faith.